The Pasadena Area Community College District come to order. There is no reportable action that was taken in closed session this evening. Mr. Orozco, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Do we have any introductions this evening? Recognitions?
We do not, although I would like to welcome former trustee Jeff Baum and welcome him. Thank you.
Walked right by him.
And I think he's going to be a speaker, correct? So, Mr. Baum,
Why
good
don't
to
you
see you.
welcome the Vice President of the Board of Governors while you're at it?
Oh, excuse me. Pardon me. And the Vice President of the California Community College Board of Governors.
And the future president, I hear. Jeff, come on up.
President Fellow, Vice President Brown, members of the Board of Trustees, it's my pleasure to be here. I'm here in my capacity as Vice President of the Board of Governors, and I wanted to bring a message from the Chancellor. And I just wanted to share the deep respect and admiration that the system has for Pasadena City College and the Pasadena Area Community College District. I had a conversation with the Chancellor when the retirement of President Rocha was announced, and he wanted me to convey to the board that the system looks to Pasadena City College and the Community College District for leadership statewide. It is one of those model institutions that not only leads the state in its transfer mission, but also leads the state in its career and technical education and other programs. And we've been so successful and that to learn how to create stronger pathways for students in high school to progress through community colleges. And so in that spirit, the Chancellor wanted to let you know that he offers his personal support and will make himself personally available to the trustees as the trustees look to for recommendations or support in any way during this period of leadership transition, because it's very important to the state that PCC continue its trajectory and its tradition of excellence. And what's very critical to that, as we all know, is the right leader. So if he can be helpful, and he asked me to share with this personally on recommendations or evaluations or even confidential assessments on candidates, Chancellor Harris wants to make himself available. And I've already ensured that he will be present personally in Pasadena on December 31st and January 1st. And you may have a chance to see him then, but I know you'll have a chance to see him beforehand. If any of you are going to the state convention, the league convention in November, you'll have a chance to see him as well. But I wanted to let you know, and that the Board of Governors know, let you know how much we care about PCC. I care personally. I want to correct also a misunderstanding that I heard. I'm still based full-time here in Pasadena, even though I go up to Sacramento. I still work at USC, but I do spend a lot of more time in Sacramento these days. And also, I wanted to share one other bit of news. The governor just appointed yet another Pasadenan to the Board of Governors for the community college system. Her name is Cecilia Estelano. She's a distinguished attorney and public policy leader, and when the time is right, I'd love to bring Member Estelano here to meet the board at PCC.
Great.
So we wish you well. We know we're in your corner, and we're looking forward to doing whatever we can do to help the board, the faculty, the students, and others find the next great leader of this institution. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Baum. Appreciate it. And congratulations again on your successes. Any others this evening? Thank you. We'll move on to the approval of the consent items. And I think best this evening if we have separate votes for these three. The first is to approve the instructional activities, the wishes of the board.
Wait, pardon me, I'm lost. What consent items? Was it in our packet?
Yeah, 3.
Yes.
Would you
Look
like
on
to-
page 2 of, or page
page
3 of the agenda.
On page 3 of the agenda? I don't do well with an agenda
I have extra coffee.
paperclip together, so,
We all got revised.
Yeah, and Dr. Mann, let me just say very
okay, they're
quickly
back
that,
here on the back.
They're listed on page 3.
Okay. thank
and
you.
going forward, all meetings will be in binders.
Oh, okay, all right. So there's,
One is a general instructional activities, approval of
Okay.
funds.
okay, is there a P report there? Are we
Yes.
approving? I would like to have the P report for separate vote.
Yeah, these are all separate votes.
The P report isn't here.
Because it was a closed session.
Thank you for the,
Okay? So the first vote on the consent items is the approval of the instructional activities that you have in front of you, 4-1, and the wishes of the board.
Move to approve.
second.
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh, a second from Ms. Brown. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries with the student representative voting in the ayes. The next board meeting is
The
33.
P report?
Pardon?
I asked for the P report to be held separate.
We're on B.
Oh, I'm sorry.
B. 33B is
See, we're going through one.
approval and ratify contracts. Mr. Miller, do you have anything to add?
We do not, sir. Thank you.
The wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh, a second from Ms. Brown. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries with the student representative voting aye. 18P, we have two items that we should pull for separate vote. And we'll begin with,
Where is it?
Oh, yeah, I can see. Here they are.
Thank you.
the first item will be the 18P, all set, which is the appointment of a acting president superintendent. The wishes of the board.
Move to approve.
Second.
Don't we have to nominate?
You can announce it, I suppose. That would probably be appropriate.
I think we need to nominate a person. That's the object this
Well, the
evening.
option, the name is right here, who we're going to
Right,
appoint.
I thought this was the name.
The motion to this evening is to appoint Dr. Robert Miller as acting superintendent. We have a motion by Ms. Waugh, a second by
I'll second it.
Ms. Brown. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries with the student representative voting in the aye.
Oh, wait a minute. I just read this. It says this is for 12 months. I don't think that's correct. This acting superintendent is only for a much briefer time than that.
It's,
is it not?
I'm going to announce it right now.
Yeah, but we need to correct that on the P
It's
report.
for, the acting position is for until September 2nd by Title V law. And so, since that is passed with that correction, we have appointed Dr. Robert Miller as the acting superintendent president, and I think we should extend him a hearty congratulations. Going to say something?
I just want to say briefly, it's an honor and a privilege to be granted this opportunity, and I and the rest of the PCC faculty and staff and administration will continue to do the best job it possibly can in support of our students. Thank you very much.
And on behalf of the board, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks for and appreciation to you for stepping in and assuming the duties of the administrator in charge over these past several weeks, and you've done a great job, and I'm sure you will do well in your capacity as acting president. For the appointment of the longer-term interim
Go ahead, sorry.
superintendent president, the board is going to follow this process. The board will commence an internal recruitment in compliance with Title V, Section 53021. The internal recruitment will commence immediately to be concluded on September 2nd, 2014. All qualified current employees of the district who apply will be considered. In addition, the board may consider qualified individuals outside the college without an external recruitment, which is authorized by Section 53021. A letter of intent by those interested internally, and a resume should be sent to the Human Relations Officer, Terry Hampton. An ad hoc committee of the board will review the candidates and make a recommendation to the full board, and the board will make its selection and announce the appointment of the interim superintendent president in the future. And I'm appointing Trustee Mann, Trustee Brown, and myself to serve on that ad hoc committee. This selection process is required and authorized by Title V, Section 5, Section 53021, and by Bylaw 1690, and should not be taken as a comment on the potential for any individual to become the interim superintendent president. So congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
He's been working very hard. Okay, now we will turn to
You've got the second item here.
the second item, which is the approval of the Student Life Director and the wishes of the directors.
I move approval.
We have a motion from Ms. Brown, and I will second that. Further discussion? Ms. Mann?
I am going to vote against this appointment, not necessarily because of anything about Tamara Rice, because I don't know her, but I have questions about what happened and her role at Occidental College and the very widely known scandal of the way sexual assaults were handled, and these questions have not been answered to my satisfaction. So for that reason, I will vote against this appointment.
Thank you, Dr. Mann. Ms. Waugh?
I also concur with Dr. Mann's comments. I think she looked like a good candidate. I heard the recommendations from Drs. Bell and Dr. Olivo, but I do think that the sexual harassment accusations that have been a cloud over Occidental, I think they really needed to be answered. I really wish that we could have had a time and a process to have that more fully explored, because if this is a good candidate, I would like to see her considered. But in truth, I don't think that enough information was given about what Ms. Rice's role was or what she could have done under those accusations.
Thank you, Ms. Waugh. Any further discussion? We'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Fellow,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes?
Ms. Waugh,
No.
Dr. Mann,
No.
Mr. Martin,
Abstain.
Dr. Selvage,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a majority, and the student trustee, you weren't in the closed session, so we won't have a vote from you. There's a majority vote, so we do have a student life dean, I guess. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to action items recommended for approval this evening, and I'm going to turn to Ms. Waugh and Dr. Mann to look at the board self-assessment and what's going on there.
Yes, Dr. Mann and Dr. Selvage and I discussed with Crystal Call-Ross some of the issues that came up under the self-evaluation. Unfortunately, the way the self-evaluation was administered, we didn't have a good tracking of who all had submitted, and so consequently, there was some probably more responses than we had trustees, so that didn't sound good. So we so we thought we ought to make sure that process was better handled. So upon further discussion with Ms. Call-Ross, we will reissue that self-evaluation. She will track the number of responses. The trustees will have a deadline of, let's see, I think we said before it's by a week from tomorrow, so August 28th, I think, up until 10 o'clock of August 28th. So trustees will have a chance to fill out the evaluation. They can go back and they can change their copy of the evaluation up until that time. After that time, Ms. Call-Ross will then close any further changes to the evaluation, and then we'll compile the results and give them to President Selvage. Student trustee, past student trustee Frazier will be included in that evaluation, since trustee Lewis has not had a chance to really work with the board. This is only his second meeting. And he is to notify Ms. Thompson of the correct email for her to send that evaluation to him tomorrow.
Thank you, Ms. Hua.
I have a question. So what's going to be different this time? What should I expect on the email that I didn't get before?
You should receive the exact same evaluation. The only difference is the way it was administered before, it was sent out to the entire board, and so it wasn't tracked one by one. This time, Ms. Colross will send out the evaluation to each board member. She'll track each one that comes in.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much. We now turn to board policy revisions recommended by the Board Policy Review Committee, and Dr. Mann is chair of that committee. You want to handle this?
Okay, we'll start with Board Policy 2430, Delegation of Authority to Superintendent President. And I see in the policy, there's a couple of places where we did not, in the yellow, we should have made a couple of changes. If you look at the second paragraph under item 3, it says the superintendent president may delegate any powers and duties entrusted to him by the board. And it's in yellow, it says including the administration of colleges and centers. Of colleges and centers should be eliminated, and colleges and should be eliminated. So it should read including the administration of centers, because we do have centers, we do not have another college. And then on the second page, the 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, again in yellow, it said information provided any trustee shall be, and then there's a choice of available or provided. That should be provided to all trustees. And I'm sorry, and Ms. Colross was on vacation and trying to pull all these together. We missed a few things that she would have caught. Anyway, so are there any questions about this particular policy?
Yes.
Yes.
On the first page down, the last paragraph on the first page, superintendent president may delegate any powers, duties. Has the board ever given consideration to whether there are any powers or duties that are so significant that they shouldn't be delegated at any time or under some circumstances?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right. Had to ask.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Wall? Trustee Wall?
On page 2, on the fourth paragraph, where it says, second sentence, the individual trustee requests for information shall be met if in the opinion of the superintendent they are not unduly burdensome or disruptive to the district operations. And so I understand the logic of that, and I agree with that. However, I would also, if there's a way that we can add some information that the superintendent, if they so deem that this is information requested is burdensome, that they present that information to the board on what that additional, I guess, undue burden is, because I would not, I guess, we run, just leaving it like this, we run the risk of having requests for information possibly denied and not really, and maybe they're misunderstood, and it could have been really handled through less, or not as burdensome of a task as maybe the superintendent might assess at that time.
So what are you suggesting we say?
Well, so add the information then, add a sentence after that, and that the superintendent president should then discuss why the reasons for the burden, or to find, so that the remainder of the board or the rest of the board can then either say we can vote on this to go forward, or that we agree with the president.
So what you would say, individual trustee requests for information shall be met if, in the opinion of the superintendent president, they are not unduly burdensome or disruptive to the district. I think we should put the burden here on the trustee. If information is not made available, the trustee may request that the matter be discussed by the full board. Would that take care of it?
Yes, okay.
Did you get that, Ms. Thompson? Okay, because it just, okay, fine. Would that?
Because I think that is already covered, that it has, that that any request then that for additional information that does have to go before the full board and be voted on. So it's really nominal requests that don't have to be voted on by the board. That's correct?
Right.
So that process is already in place.
Okay.
Mr. Martin?
Well, that was my comment, is that's already, you
If
don't
it's
really
already-
even need to say it, because it's already, you call for an agenda item, we put it on the agenda
Yeah, it could be.
and discuss it. That's what we do.
Thank you.
So in,
I do
I
think
don't
it
mind the
needs-
language,
yeah.
but it really doesn't seem necessary to me.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Well, I guess I have some concerns about leaving in the discretion or the judgment of the superintendent president whether or not to provide the information that's requested. I wish there was some other way to address this. I think I would say something like the individual trustee request for information shall be provided, well, I don't know.
Mr. President?
Yeah, do we have to vote on this thing this evening? I'd like to work with that language and
don't think
see if
there's
we
a
can
rush.
revise it.
Mr. Thompson, or Mr. Martin?
You know, this is one policy in a body policy. And in the body of all policies, you know, we don't have to make sure every individual policy answers every single question as long as the body of the policies answers the question. So there's methods in other policies and in our practices that cover these kinds of issues. If the superintendent says to me that's too burdensome, I can talk to the board president. I can bring it up in a board meeting. I'd like this on the agenda. There's other policies that handle that. We know what we are. We operate them very, very well. So I don't think we need to, you know, these are good thoughts, but I don't think we have to capture them in every single policy.
Thank you. Ms. Waugh?
Yeah, I would like to move that we defer this for the board to then come up with some additional information. I do think that there is process, but I don't know that that process has been well understood. And having, you know, seeing that some people's requests get turned down and not know why, I think could be dangerous. And I think that as we move into an environment of openness and transparency, it's important for us to make sure that we understand this process and the process is in place.
I second that.
Ms.
We'll go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I have
that
no
okay,
problem
Ms.
returning
Dr.
this
Mann?
to the committee,
Yeah.
because we do have the language in here about the agenda, putting items on the agenda.
Yeah.
I think we could just pick up the same language. It's not going to hurt. Any
Okay.
other questions on policy 2430? Okay, and I'm suggesting we do like we do before, make one motion at the end to approve them all unless people have any concerns.
So we're
on the-
deferring this one.
Yeah.
Yes, 2430, that's, we're returning it to the committee, right. The next one is Board Policy 2740, which is the Board of Trustees. And actually, if you look on the second page here, there's a detailed discussion of the orientation of newly elected trustees. Does anyone have any questions about this policy?
This, we're talking about new trustee orientation.
Yeah, well, that's what's on the second page, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I had sent to a couple of board, I think I sent to you, Trustee Mann, a couple months ago, a PowerPoint that I received when I went to my first conference back in November. It was from Yuba City Community College. It was the model that was presented at a breakout session for new trustee orientation, and it was pretty elaborate, but it was also very convincing that the orientation ought to be elaborate. Mine hasn't been very elaborate, and so this isn't much changed, I think, from what we had before.
This is what we had before. There's
Yeah.
no changes here.
Yeah.
This is what we had before.
In any case, I'm going to be, I don't, this has not been followed in my case up to this point. And I think that we should consider elaborating a little bit more about how thorough the orientation for new trustees should be. I mean, it lists a bunch of things here, but in being executed here, I don't think it provides sufficient amount of orientation.
We haven't done a very good job. I've never had an orientation myself. And Mr. Lewis, I'm glad you raised your hand because you and I have to talk about trustee mentor. Go
I was
ahead.
getting ready to say, I think the problem in the execution here is who's supposed to do it.
Exactly.
So me knowing that I am allotted this, I don't know who to ask. So if I ask Dr. Selvage here, and he's like, I don't know either, then it never gets done, so.
We have a response.
I would just like to share that I've already been talking with President Fellow, that if the board wishes at the retreat on September 13th, that retreat date is maintained, we will, as a staff, bring to you a template of what we would consider to be the orientation that would take into effect all the items that are here, perhaps with some additional things such as the major initiatives that we are engaged in right now as an institution and how those initiatives tie to our educational master plan and your board goals. And then at that retreat, you can take a look at that and decide if that's what you want, or if you want to modify it. Obviously, we would follow suit, and then we would prepare the orientation for student trustee Lewis, and for you, trustee Selvage, and anybody else on the board, and get back into the quote-unquote swing of doing this. Because as a staff member, I would agree, we have not been doing this in recent years.
I sent that PowerPoint to a couple of trustees, but also to Dr. Rocha, but if you haven't seen it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be perfect, thank you.
It's very comprehensive, and it's very convincing
Right.
about what needs to be done.
Yeah, our Associate Vice President, Dr. Carner, is working on this project right now, so it'll be very helpful.
Yeah. And new individual trustees will have different areas of interest, and I expressed in an email when I sent an email about sort of formalizing my orientation, that my particular interests were budgeting and the facilities master plan. So
I
different
think
trustees will have
Ms.
specific
Brown and then Ms.
areas.
Wall, and then I want to make a comment.
Yeah, I think the policy is pretty, I guess, well thought out. But like Trustee Lewis said, who is doing it?
It
So I
tells you
think
right here in the policy that the president of the college does it.
the president of the
Superintendent
college.
president
Oh,
conducts
yeah?
the orientation.
Well, anyhow, maybe we really need to make that aware to everyone, because I myself, it took me a long time to get a halfway. I think it's both, not just the superintendent. I think the board president as well has a part of it. Is that correct?
No.
No,
The-
so
the
that
board- The board
changed.
president, according to this policy, offers the new trustee a mentor, but the superintendent president is completely responsible for the orientation.
Okay, so good. So now we know that the president, the board president will appoint a mentor for. So these things, we need to have it really clear, so not for us, but for new coming trustees. So we all could say, okay, refer to this room, and these are the people you need to look at. But actually, I think the policy is good if we just follow it.
Ms. Wall?
Ms. Wah?
You know, with many of our policies, we state it generally, and then we leave the details to a process. So I'm wondering, like, under 4 and 5, I mean, is this considered the minimum of what will always be required? Or should we be looking at the changes that are occurring in the college environment, the accreditation information that's coming through that maybe needs to be part of the orientation, and leave that as part of the process? So this kind of speaks, I think, to what Dr. Selvage was saying, that he saw a template that was maybe different and maybe a little more detailed. And I have also seen some other templates that are a little bit different too, and that might be helpful for us to review.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is maybe we should also pull this, at least until we've had a chance to see what staff is coming up with. One of the things that, you know, we might want to consider is, do we really want all this detail in the policy? Rather than just say that the board, you know, president will, you know, conduct an orientation, and we don't have implementing procedures in a bylaw. That's one of the differences between the bylaws and the, you know, the policies, and maybe just leave it at that. So I would, if it's agreeable with the rest of the committee, I think we also ought to pull this one based on the discussion at the board, and then wait till after we've seen the staff's presentation.
Any
Is that
problems?
agreeable with everyone?
Second.
Yeah, we're making no progress fast. Okay, the next one is board, yes,
I
pardon me,
want
Mr.
to
Martin.
comment to the committee that I am way more inclined to your latter approach of presenting a concept of what should be happening. The superintendent should be orienting new trustees and providing them current and relevant information. And that might include things we don't even think of yet. And there may be some more this is just so incredibly granular that it's like, here's your stack, and yet, not included was something that's really current and prevalent, like Trustee Wassett. I'd prefer to address that from a conceptual standpoint rather than try to intricately think of every little, the Quarterly Courier and, thing that may have got missed. So I would personally think in terms of important concepts and not get quite into the how many months of minutes.
Okay, we'll look at that. We'll see what the staff has, and then we don't have to put everything that's in the staff orientation in the policy either. I think we need to, we have tried in the policy to take out everything that's not legally required in order to give the board flexibility. Okay, the next, anything else on this one? The next
I
one
just
is-
want to say, and city councils, I think, do the best job. They just call all the heads of each department. They sit at a round table with the new city council member, and they go through it in a few hours, and seems to be adequate. Go ahead, Dr. Mann.
Okay, the next policy is Board Policy 2745. That is on the board self-evaluation. We have are in the process of completing a self-evaluation. If you notice, much of this is required by, all the information in red is legally required. We are doing something very similar to that, and the only thing actually that isn't required in all those red passages, which was points 4 through 7, is you need to say who will complete the evaluation instrument, the report, and we put in the board president because that's what we have done in the past. So that's what has been taken out. So are there any questions about this?
Sorry, what's been taken out?
At the bottom, you see 4, 5, and 6 have been lined out.
Right, yeah.
We substituted the legal language for the board policy, but essentially it's the same, it says the same thing.
I was concerned, we were given a copy of this in the packet this evening. The only difference I see is that the board president is highlighted, and the one that was given in the agenda that's not highlighted is the one handed out
That was
here.
that was the kind of error that happened because Crystal wasn't here to help us get the highlighting out. The highlighting should not be there, okay?
Crystal's got job security, I guess.
She certainly does. She certainly does.
Either that or she can't take vacation, I'm not sure.
Right, well, this was when she was just on vacation. The next one is Board Policy 2760. This is resolutions by the board on board action on legislative issues. And if you notice, this is existing policy. There is a couple of things that have been removed, like a reference to the education code. Otherwise, this is current policy 1420 with no changes. Any questions on this? And college is capitalized in one place where it wasn't. Okay, if there's no questions, then we'll go to the next one, which is Board Policy 2770, which is on community relations. Again, this is current board policy. If you notice on references, there's no legal references on this, just from the board minutes. We had decided at one time that we wanted to have a policy on community relations, and this is the policy we have. Any questions on this? All right, the next policy is Board Policy 4700. This is the policy for the radio station. We brought this back after the inquiry by Mr. Thompson, and we've changed the language, if you notice, from operated, a full-time public radio station owned and operated by the Pasadena Area Community College District, by operated under the supervision of the Pasadena College District under the FCC. Ms. Cooper did check with our FCC attorney, and this is the required language.
So the license is actually issued to the Board of Trustees?
Yes.
Not just to the college?
Yes, it's to the Board of Trustees. That's why we fill out those forms each 3 or 4 years. The trustees are the licensees of the college. That is correct, right, Ms. Cooper?
Yes, that's correct,
Yes,
Trustee Mann.
Yes. So are there any, and then we do have the clarification that it's operated under our supervision.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions on this one? Okay. The next policy is on delegation of authority. And this is, again, most of this is the language in red is the required language. And on the second page, it shows some language which has been moved to another policy. So one of the things I think we might want to discuss, this was raised by one of the people who looked at it, is these limits. Right now, we have, in order to be valid and enforceable, all transactions require board approval except for the following. The limit on purchases of $500, amendment to expenditure $500, field contracts for facilities, $15,000, contracts involve no cost to district, contracts for equipment supplies, $5,000, personal services contracts for $3,000, authorizations to bid that are for $5,000 or less, and contract change orders, there's not more than 10% of the contract. It's my understanding, or the policy reproof, are we still going to approve authorizations to bid, or is that no longer, we're no longer approving that?
Trustee Mann, you are, but with the CUP-CCAA adoption, that threshold has changed, and now the formal bid requirement is over $175,000. The $45,000 to $175,000 range is the informal bid process, and below $45,000 is effectively a due diligence or just a straight
Okay,
selection.
so $5,000 is not appropriate at all here?
No, because of the adoption of the CUP-CCAA. So these, actually, and the $15,000 limit is the one that's most not applicable, because now that portion of the Public Contracts Code no longer applies, since you've adopted a different procedure. Before, under Public Works contracts, anything over $15,000 had to go out for formal bid. Now, no longer.
Okay, I think what we should pull this policy and consult with Ms. Cooper about what the legal limits are, and we should raise it, and maybe even consider the $500 limit. I think the board might, I'd like to just hear, do people still want to approve everything over $500?
When was the $500 limit established? We've had inflation over the years.
Well, let's see, it tells us here, it was approved last time in July 16th, 2008. It was raised then. When I was first elected to the board, the limit, I think, was $50. Mr. Martin?
Well, I'm one for certainly raising that significantly. I know in organizations where I work that do not have, $250 million budgets, I'm given $10,000 discretion. And to think that the superintendent's running, a $250 million operation on a $500 string just doesn't seem to fit to me. So you're taking it back to the committee, but I, for one, am interested in saving some staff time and saving some trees and granting a little more authority to the superintendent.
I'd suggest we raise it to 1,000.
Anyone else?
I'm good for up to 5,000.
Okay, because some of this is not covered by that other, like the regular contracts and so on. Anyone else have anyone
Were you
like to?
proposing to pull this and?
Yes, we're going to
consider-
pull it and bring
okay.
it back.
We'll bring it back.
Okay, I just wanted to get some information so that we can have a better idea of what the board wants before we bring it back.
And I'm just going to argue the point that we've kind of made an emphasis as ramping up to accreditation to try to figure out ways not to micromanage. And I think this is an example of how we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Mr. Lewis?
Yep, I think maybe if we had more clarity on what's not covered, because if we're talking about the things that are covered and what was already approved, it's no good anyway. So we'd have to see what's not covered under that policy, and then talk about the totals.
Okay, what was covered on the policy is pretty much bidding, right?
Yes, that's for public works contracts.
Public works contracts. Can you clarify what a public work contract is?
Yes, it's anything that has to do with maintenance of facilities, construction of facilities, all facilities projects, to be contrasted with purchases of materials, supplies, and equipment. That's the threshold that remains in effect, which is $82,400 now,
83 and change.
$83,400.
So that's item C then?
But separate and apart from that, our personal services agreement, which fall under neither category, and right now, the board approves those for anything over $3,000, which is many, many of our contracts.
Ms. Cooper, could you speak to item C, please? Trustee Lewis, the field contracts for facilities modifications.
Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, field contracts are public works contracts.
So that's really what the Kupka thing would relate to
Correct.
that one in particular.
Right, so now our threshold for that is $45,000 with no informal or formal bid process.
Right. But of course, everything comes back to the board for formal approval.
Correct. Yeah, it
regardless.
comes back for approval.
Yes.
Okay, maybe you just clarified it for me. So the law says that the superintendent has up to 45,000, but it does come back.
The contract itself comes to the board for approval.
Okay.
What the provision you've adopted, we call it cupcake, I guess we're calling it, is that it doesn't need to go out for a formal bid any longer. That up to 45,000, the contractor could be directly selected. From 45,000 to 175,000, there's an informal bid process, so the district no longer needs to come to the board for the authority to bid. And then over 175,000 is the procedure you've always seen before.
So it's authority to bid, but not the bid. Because as
correct.
much as I'm for getting rid of the pencils and approving all that, I'm not for just turning over 45K to the superintendent.
No, and
Precisely.
that would not be the case.
So what you have turned over is the ability to select the contractor, but the board still approves the fiscal authority to enter into the contract.
And then, so item A, any purchase which does not exceed $500, that's for everything from equipment to supplies, but that doesn't relate to contracts, if you will, correct?
Well, a lot of our purchasing is done on purchase orders.
Right.
And we have logs and logs of purchase orders that you approve on consent. And so by raising these threshold, it would make that log smaller.
That's correct. And I think that was your point, Trustee
That
Martin.
was my
Yes.
point.
Okay, we'll get together, Ms. Cooper, you can give me some information on this, maybe suggest some limits, and then we'll bring this back. So I guess what we now need is a motion.
Excuse me, bring it back for the purpose of deciding what the dollar
Yes.
figure should be.
Yes.
Yes, I mean, that's my intent. So I guess we need a motion to approve policy 2747, policy 2760, 2770, and 4700. Those are the ones that the others we will pull and send back and redo them.
Do we have a motion?
Move.
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh
And I'll
and a second from Ms. Brown. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries with the student trustee voting in the affirmative.
Trustee Fellow, could I just make a brief comment? I think it's really good that the board actually enters into this discussion and, makes suggestions, and we bring it back. It shows that we are really, really considering the policies, not just rubber stamping them. So I welcome this because of the Brown Act, only the committee can look at, only the three of us, and we all can't get together and discuss it in advance.
Thank you for your good work again. We will now turn to another action item, the final action item for this evening, which is item number G, which is modification and reporting relationship for the Office of General Counsel. And this is a recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the modification of the administrative organization structure in order that the Office of General Counsel would report directly to the board. Dr. Mann?
I have a very major concern about this change in reporting relationship. I was on an accreditation follow-up team to Coast Community College this April, so that was only a few months ago. And we were asked to look at 4 recommendations which had put the college on warning. In July, they received a letter from the commission saying they had until March to address these deficiencies, or they would go in to show cause to lose their accreditation. It was very, very serious. Recommendation number 4 actually was recommendation number 5, is directly related to this change in reporting relationship. What I have here is a accreditation follow-up. This is a public document. It's not something I had just because I was a member of and I was on the site team. I visited the college. I talked to the people there, and I talked with the people who had been the accreditation commission. Okay. Recommendation number 5, former recommendation number 5, is now commission recommendation number 1. And to clarify this, when you get a report, is Matt? Yeah, he's here. Matt, if I'm stating this wrong, please correct me. But normally when you get the report back from the team makes recommendations. The team recommends that usually you're not doing SLOs for all your courses. The team recommends that you work on campus climate. The team recommends that your football field is too small. Anyway, it's always the team. Is that not correct? Okay. Once in a blue moon, you get a commission recommendation. That means this recommendation is not coming from the visiting team, but it's coming from the accreditation commission itself. And this is a commission recommendation. I've been on 8 teams. I've never even seen one before. And I want to read this to you. Commission recommendation 1. To meet the standards, the district needs to examine the role of 4 board employees who report directly to the Board of Trustees to ensure there is no conflict with the delegation of authority of the chancellor and the college presidents. Analysis and findings. Various documents, including board policies, administrative procedures, and job descriptions, were identified for the work group to review and analyze. Further, they interviewed the chancellor, board members, the board secretary to understand the perception and processes. And I'm not going to read all this to you, but there were the 4 employees were an attorney, a PR person. What was the other one? The other 2, one was attorney, PR, a auditor, and the 3rd person I can't remember. The college agreed that all these people would now report directly to the chancellor. It gets more and more interesting. 2 of the board members did not agree with this recommendation, or one of the board members. Well, I'm just going to read it. There's a 5 board member, and 3 of the members agreed to change the reporting relationship so that all employees in the district would report directly to the chancellor. On the other hand, 2 of the board members are still reluctant to delegate authority. They recognize changes occurred and they attribute the measures to control, et cetera. They feel removing those controls may move the district backwards rather than forward. And one of these 2 board members believes that the ACCJC has gone too far in its authority by saying that the employees must report to the chancellor, and sent a letter to the Department of Education. This letter was not supported by the president of the board as a whole. The board president sent a follow-up to the president of the Department of Education and the ACCJC to this effect, and received correspondence back stating that it was not from the Department of Education, but again from the commission, that it was inappropriate for any district employee to report directly to anyone except the chancellor. And this is a commission recommendation. This is a public document. I think if we make this change, we're just asking for a warning on this. Because, again, as I said, I have never seen a commission recommendation before. I think they're very rare. Usually you have a recommendation from a team, and they're labeled as team recommendations, and that comes from the commission itself, not from the visiting team. So I strongly urge us not to make this change at this time, particularly since the visit's coming up in less than a year.
Thank you, Dr. Mann. Ms. Waugh?
Yeah, I respect the opinion, I guess, that came down on the ACCJC's recommendations. I guess I'd like to have a little more information on why that's made. I come from the public sector, and throughout the public sector, the general counsel always reports to the board. They don't report to the general manager, and the reason is because we find that the general counsel is not the personal attorney of the general manager. The board is the overall overriding authority for that department, for that district. And so we, in public sector, we're very, very conscious of that reporting structure and to ensure that there is no conflict of interest with the general manager using a general counsel for their personal legal counsel and advice. So I find it very odd that the ACCJC would rule in this area. Also, if we're not ready to vote on it today, I would like to suggest, I know some of the general counsels for other colleges, as I'm sure Dr. Mann and others might too. I think there are 6 colleges that have an internal general counsel. I think it would be useful to know what the reporting structure is in other colleges, those other 6 colleges, because I think that certainly, I think that there's reason to be maybe a little cautious and apprehensive. My caution would be that whoever the general counsel reports to, the general counsel is not, even though they're considered part of the executive team, they are not really like one of the district employees, in that they are not a manager and they should not be given the authority to then go out and give instructions to the employees, overriding the authority of the president. And I think those are the things that we need to be conscious of in that reporting structure. So anyway, those are my recommendations.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would just add that I think we ought to take a look at what Dr. Mann has presented, but my experience coming from a city council background is that the council hires the lawyer just as we have done here. The policy is such that the general counsel is hired by the board of trustees, not by the superintendent president. And in the city council, the council reports to the city council, not to the general manager or city manager. And that's my inclination. That's what I'd like to do here. But I think we have an obligation to take a look at what Dr. Mann has brought to our attention.
I'm curious what the purpose of this change is overall. Is it because of a representation issue? So that the general counsel can say they represent the board instead of the president? Or what's the meaning of this change?
I think that's one of the issues, but I think there's other issues involved. Mr. Oak?
Well, I recognize that the general counsel of any college or district is an employee, but also I believe the relationship between the general counsel and the governing body is a special relationship that is different than the other relationships for any other employee, and that the board, well, like Trustee Thompson says, city councils have city attorneys reporting directly to the council, not to the city manager or city administrator. I've been on another public board of a municipal corporation for a number of years, and our council reported to the board. There was no mistake about that. I think it's important that the board, when it receives legal advice, be receiving legal advice from somebody that reports to no one else.
You know, as a councilman and a water board director, the attorney always reports to the board. Any other comments? The wishes of the...
I'd just like to conclude. I understand that the city council, the city attorney appoints the city council. City council is also a legislative body that drafts legislation, and I think that's a reason for having this. But I would just like to point out that a community college does not draft legislation. The chancellor's office takes the law, by the legislature and develops all the regulations for all the college. There's a council there that does that. All I'm saying is that I think if we make this change based on this is March 2014, that we can expect to be not to, to get a warning, not to get a finding, but to get a warning, because this is a commission finding. I can't imagine the commission is going to change its mind in 2 years. And again, as I've said several times to several of our board members, a community college is not a municipality. It's not a water board. It is a city council, and it is a community college, and it has to be accredited by this body. It is the only body that is accredited. Now, some of you may have been following the controversy over the accreditation, and you may be aware that the state auditor found so many problems with the work of this commission that they actually recommended that the community college system consider getting another accreditation body. And I'm sorry Mr. Baum is not here. That recommendation was rejected completely by the chancellor. So for at least as long as we have this chancellor, this is going to be our accrediting body, and they have ruled in a commission ruling that this is not appropriate. So I certainly hope people will think about what's best for the college and the students, and not so much of what they're used to serving on other bodies with other purposes.
Dr. Fellow, I would recommend that we would put together an ad hoc group to consider the documents and the information that Dr. Mann has presented, and then bring this item back to the board at a later time.
Thank you. Did you want to
I
comment?
agree with you.
Okay. Mr. Martin?
Well, I'd like to say my 2 cents before it goes too far too fast. I think we need to explore a little bit of what the actual job description and workload of the general counsel is. And I think one of the things that we need to consider, I was actually one who wasn't in favor of the general counsel position, though I'll be the first to admit that there was a operational workload here of so many contracts and so many kinds of operations that it made cost-benefit sense to have a general counsel rather than subbing it out to our outside counsel. So though I initially was against the position, I certainly value the position such as it is. But I do believe that the main focus of this position is not to serve as a double check, is the superintendent being an honest person. I think it's the legal issues of the district. In addition to general counsel, the board has at its discretion already outside counsel, that the board has delegated the board president to have the right to call anytime, any place, for any reason. The board also has outside auditors who are not employees. Neither of these people are employees, who can serve for that, who can, at the board's discretion, address the issue, is the current superintendent or anybody else on the up and up and doing things right and not using any college resource, whether it's a counsel or an assistant or something else, for their own personal gain. I don't think we hire general counsel to double check the superintendent president. I think we hire general counsel to get us through the day-to-day workload. And if we're talking about the day-to-day workload and we're talking about being available on a daily basis for all the different departments that need it, it makes sense to me that they report to the superintendent. We let the superintendent evaluate the performance. And as with the other assistant superintendents and other high-level management positions, there will be a tremendous amount of board interaction between general counsel and the board, even though they're reporting to the superintendent. And I think we all feel part of that team. So I would view it as a tremendous mistake to move general counsel away from the superintendent president, especially considering we already have outside counsel, we already have independent auditors to help us with those areas that were addressed, why it's important for the board to have some separation from the superintendent.
Okay, thank you very much. It appears there's a consensus, and let me know if I'm wrong, of an ad hoc committee to explore this action item this evening, and also to look at what other community colleges are doing. And I'd like to ask Dr. Mann, Ms. Waugh, and Mr. Thompson if you would sit on that ad hoc committee. Thank you. Now,
Do we get a chance to say no, or it just?
No?
Who are they? I'm sorry, Ms. Waugh, Mr.
Me
Thompson,
and
and
me.
you?
I'm told.
I missed the third.
okay, now, item number H this evening is the superintendent president's report.
Yes, sir. Quickly turn to that. First of all, I would like to mention that the fall enrollments continue to go well. we continue to be trending towards approximately a little bit over 2,000 more students this fall than we had last fall. In raw numbers, we have approximately 79,000 credit students enrolled. That's a head count of almost 26,000, representing about 79,000 enrollments. We have a non-credit head count right now of about 2,300, representing about 3,600 enrollments. From a seats point of view, that's over 83,000 credit and over 6,000 non-credit. So we're 94% capacity in credit, 60% in non-credit. So in plain English, we're doing very well, and I want to congratulate our enrollment management team, our deans, our faculty, and all others that will be providing service to these students come next Monday. I also want to mention that we have Welcome Day this Friday under the leadership of Dr. Celia Medina, who is one of our counselors, overall leadership under Dr. Olivo, and we're looking forward to a very, very good event on Friday. Countless college staff have been involved in putting that together. I want to briefly thank Trustees Thompson, Waugh, and Brown for participating in a briefing on our Small Business Development Center this morning, which will lead to a larger briefing on our economic and workforce development plan for the college, which then might result in a study session for the full board in the near future. But things are moving forward there, and I appreciate those trustees for their time this morning. And finally, I want to report that, well, two things real quick. Our Pathways programs continue to go incredibly well. A program that started with 300 students a few years ago, 3 years ago, now has over 2,100. I met with many of the student mentors, our counselors, faculty on Monday, congratulated them on an incredible job, and walked out of the restroom on the second floor this morning. I know too much information, and right into a tour of about 25 students by one of our mentees helping orient these students, and it's just incredibly exciting, and I give thanks to everybody for that. And finally, we had a really excellent managers retreat yesterday at Kellogg West, where many of the topics that the board and the college in general are grappling with right now were discussed, and I think our management team is prepped and ready to go to face the future in a very bright and significant way. Thank you, sir. We have a total of 30,000 students roughly coming aboard, but that represents almost 79,000 enrollments in credit and almost 36 enrollments in non-credit. But again, we still have 5-6 days to go before the fall semester starts. So, and again, we're pushing towards very, very aggressive FTES targets this year to make certain that we recapture some of that restoration FTS that every district lost in the 2011-12 year. And we actually have to, without getting too much detail, we have to recover 37.5% of that this year. You kind of use it or lose it. And again, we're on good track. We had a good first summer session. It looks like we're going to have a very strong fall, and we'll move forward into the spring from there.
Thank you. Any questions?
For those of us that aren't quite proficient in shorthand, when will we have a table or some?
We have a written report. At the last board meeting, Dr. Scott provided a report. At the September 3rd meeting, we'll have another report.
So that'll have
all the detail.
Those figures and then everything since, okay.
Everything will be written, and it'll be in your board packet that you get the Friday before the September 3rd meeting. I just wanted to alert everybody that we're heading in the right direction.
Any other questions to the acting president? Good. Now it's the time for announcements by shared governance. These are announcements of upcoming events. Mr. Roscoe.
So I'm sorry if I sound funny. I've been suffering from really severe allergies lately, so I'm all congested right now. So the first thing, I'm very excited that you guys have approved a new dean for our office downstairs, as I was running myself ragged, and it was totally worth it. But thank you guys so much. I'm really excited for tomorrow and to haze her into our rituals. The second thing, we are so excited for Welcome Day. I'm putting together our PowerPoint presentations for that day. We will be giving a presentation. We will be doing 3 sessions, 3 one-hour sessions, about what your student government does on campus and what we can do for you in regards to being peer mentors and being a really awesome leadership experience here on campus. And the second thing is we are also running Week of Welcome, which is going to happen the 25th through the 6th, 7th, through the 28th. It'll be Monday through Thursday. There'll be food and some entertainment here, as well as some awesome resources for students. We will also be having Club Week, the 3rd week of school. I don't know I think that's the 2nd week of September. So we will be having clubs out on campus to make sure that students get the resources they need for their extracurricular activities. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sullivan, representing Classified Senate, are you here? Mr. Cairo, Academic Senate.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, everyone. Let me begin by saying congratulations to Dr. Miller for accepting the challenge of the job. He didn't have to, but he did, so I think that shows his very good character that he has of willing to take on the responsibilities and difficulties that we have. We've already had discussions, and we've met with some of the team and the Academic Senate, the Executive Committee. We feel confident that we'll be able to work through these difficult times that we find ourselves in. The Executive Committee has met a couple of times this week, and we're going to be extending a warm invitation to Dr. Miller, Dr. Bell, and the 3 Associate Vice Presidents to attend the Faculty's Flex Day, Professional Development Day, to give the faculty an opportunity to meet them, to hear a few words that they have to say, so that we all know we can put the face with the actions of that'll be coming forward within this academic year. Next, I would like to, based on the Executive Committee, make suggestions to the Board of Trustees. One is in regards to a consent item that the board passed on February 5th, 2014. It's consent item 18.-1. My suggestion is to please make these a little bit more to clarify what they are. For example, it states the majority of these events take a critical component of the SASE grant is professional learning for faculty, administrators, and at times students. The majority of these events take place on campus, and some of them may be half or whole day workshops, retreats, and to anticipate expense not to exceed $10,000 for food and refreshments. So when you look at it at face value, this is allowing the Academic Senate to have some food and refreshments for any of the retreats. But unfortunately, when we tried to apply for them, it turns out that the money, even though it says it's for faculty, administrators, and time students, it turns out that it's not. It's actually these funds, I found out, are for the Academy of Professional Learning. And the reason is because the consent or the cost center is 3115, which I found out this week is for the Academy of Professional Learning. So even though when you read it as a faculty, it says that we as a faculty or administrators can access these funds, when we try to do so, turns out that it was geared towards a specific group. So we do have a concern with that, and I would like to ask you to please clarify that, or I would ask you or suggest that you perhaps make an amendment to either eliminate the cost center to make it or create a cost center for all faculty so that we can access these funds. And second is amend it to extend the deadline. The deadline to access these funds is August 26, 2014. The second suggestion that we have is now that the board is looking at the various board policies, perhaps a board policy can be added that would result in the Board of Trustees, for lack of a better term, having an office hour on campus in which faculty can come directly to you to discuss issues. We feel that it's best for the Board of Trustees to hear issues coming directly from the faculty. If you have a problem with the car, you're not going to talk to the gas station attendant. You're going to talk to a mechanic to tell you what the problem is. So I think if in the effort of obtaining as much information about the issues that we have here, that maybe you have an office here on campus, maybe once a week, 1 hour a day, you can come to campus and just have an open door and have the faculty or staff, administrators, anyone come to you and just pass along some information that will ultimately help you make a better decision. And one final thing regarding the issue of whether or not you should have the general counsel, I think report to the Board of Trustees. Why not just go to past practice and ask, what does Cal State Fullerton do? What do Cal States do? What do UCs do? And see what they do. What do community colleges do? Do they have the general counsel reporting to you or to the president? Thank you. That's all I report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Douglas, Dr. Douglas, Management Association.
Thank you, President, fellow board. First of all, I'd like to echo what President Miller said about our retreat yesterday. And I want to thank Dr. Corner for organizing it, leading the team that put it together, and so on. It was very interesting. We spent some time talking about empathy and communication and participatory governance and those kinds of issues. We also spent some time looking at the Modern Think campus climate data. We found it very sobering, and it's very clear to me that we have a lot of work to do in the future, and business as usual isn't going to do it. We're going to have to take some radical steps to move forward. So it was a good retreat overall, and I thank you for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. We'll now turn to the trustees and Mr. Lewis.
Nothing to report.
Dr. Roth.
Nothing to report.
Savage. Mr. Thompson.
No report.
Nothing.
Well, if you would insist.
Mr. Martin.
Nothing, thank you.
Dr. Mann.
Just one thing. Jeffrey Baum, who is the Vice President of the Board of Governors, was here earlier. And if everything goes as expected, he will be elected President of the Board of Governors on November the 17th. This is really a very big deal. It's a very important position. We've never had anyone from Pasadena City College on the Board of Governors, let alone President of the Board of Governors. And I was thinking that it might be nice, two things. First of all, I think after he becomes President of the Board of Governors, we should have him come and be introduced and acknowledge him on campus. And maybe some of us might want to go to the meeting where he is elected. I don't know if Trustee was going to that meeting or not for Triple CT, but it might be nice to kind of have the home team there, so to speak, because I've been at these meetings when president is elected, and usually it's kind of pro forma, but I don't think it's pro forma. I think it's a really important thing.
Good ideas. Thank you. Ms. Waugh.
Yes, on the LACSTA, LA County School Trustees Association, on September 17th, we will be having, LACSTA will be co-hosting with the LA County Superintendent the forum for the Superintendent of Instruction, so Torlakson versus Tech. So I encourage all trustees and any other community members who would want to go. It will be over at the County Superintendent's digs over on 9300 East Imperial Highway. So that's 917. Also on 922, I sent out emails to all of the trustees, and hopefully you encourage your K-12 districts to attend. Although LACSTA is not going to be co-hosting it, we did think that it was important for school districts to know that the Avatar Corporation will be hosting a solar energy information, well, actually it'll be a dinner with James Cameron and his group. And what they're trying to do is build 400 plus school districts to invest in solar energy, and it's a $0 investment, but it's to bring everybody into a solar grid, and I think that's important. And one last thing I wanted to talk about was many of you probably heard about the South Pasadena incident where 2 students were arrested recently for planning a Columbine kind of an activity, which is really shocking for those of us who are from that area. But Mayor Kabessarian spoke yesterday on KPCC, and she talked about how the police department had just finished their emergency operations training, and it was because of that they were so well prepared to respond. And so I know that our own police force and our own administration are looking at things like that. Dr. Douglas is starting his GIS lab. For those of us who have worked in emergency operations centers, GIS is a really key component to helping plan how we respond to emergencies. So I wanted to put that out.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
No report.
Thank you. I only would like to mention again and thank Dr. Miller for the work he's done the past few weeks, and even was on vacation, was called out of vacation several times. And we appreciate all you've done the past several weeks and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much.
Any questions about the proposed future board meeting dates?
Where are they in this?
The agenda, Jay?
Does it have the time of the fall retreat on here? It just says fall retreats.
Why is it 6 p.m.?
Right.
Exactly. We're not.
Yeah, I would suggest that the meeting start at 9 o'clock, if that work. Actually, 8:30 for a continental breakfast, and then 9 o'clock for the business, if that would be acceptable to the board.
And so it is the 13th?
That's what it's on the calendar for at the moment, yes.
It was supposed to be Miss Brown's home for dinner. That's why it was at 6 p.m.
Have a
It
sleep.
will only be 4 hours.
Do we
Anything
have a
else?
place yet?
No. We'll get to it. Okay. Proposed future agenda items? Any trustee? If not, we will adjourn this meeting. I'd like to adjourn in tonight's meeting in memory of James Foley, the American journalist whose brutal execution by Islamic militants was posted on YouTube today, and may God be with him and his family. It really is an example of how low the human race has gotten, unfortunately. This meeting is adjourned.
One, two, three.